We're going to do things a little bit differently and just start adding a few more constants in this case to the brain of our application above the body. This just allows us to change the look of the app very quickly and very easily rather than having to sort through our code and find where we want to change things. So we're going to sort out a few colors at the top of the screen or for the top of the app. So let dark color be a color which equals color, open brackets, and type color again. You should be able to find color literal. It may not be on the top option, but since I've used this recently, it's at the top. And color literal will give us a nice little box that you can double click and choose a color. So I'm going to choose a really dark red to start with. Let medium color be a color, which equals color and color literal again, which I'm going to choose a slightly lighter version. Let light color be a color, which equals color literally for the final time, which I'm going to choose a bit more of a pinkish, about there. Okay, so inside our application, we're going to start with a Z stack. The Z stack will layer the background to start with, putting a linear gradient. So I'm just going to keep using the helpers throughout this, using the predictive code, and hit enter on linear gradient, open brackets, and you can see it's asking for a few initializers, and it's asking for a gradient, and I'm going to use the colors. Now this here is a square bracket, which indicates an array, which is a collection of data. And in this case, it's looking for a collection of colors, which we've made up here. So I'm going to put a square bracket in and say I want to use a gradient with my dark color, medium color, and light color. The starting point will be at the unit point dot. We'll go to unit point dot, and you can see all the options are there. I'm going to choose top. Leading means the left and trailing is the right. Top and bottom are pretty obvious. And unit point, because that's what it's asking for, bottom trailing. Let's resume that and have a look. So because the linear gradient has no frame, it stretches to the full width and height of the application, allowing for spacing, which is what's called the safe areas. Now I'm going to remove that space there and actually stretch it all the way by putting a dot on our Z stack and choosing ignore safe areas. So you can see edges ignoring safe areas, and it's allowing us to choose which we would like to ignore. We're going to say again, we're asking for an edge dot set dot, and I can ignore just the bottom, the horizontal, the leading, and so forth, but I actually want to ignore them all. And now it stretches to the top and the bottom with a nice little linear gradient as our background. So it's going to give it a space and start building the rest of the application. So since this is the background, I'm going to leave that layer at the back and place on top of it a V stack. The V stack is going to contain all the various elements, the user interface elements of my stopwatch, starting with the text 0000. I'm then going to put a couple of buttons. Now the buttons I'm going to make custom. So I'm going to put them in a H stack so they are next to each other. And I've got text start, text stop for a stop and start button. So that seems to be laid out quite nicely. I'm going to give it a bit of space, and I'm going to put on the V stack some spacing between each of the elements horizontally, or vertically, sorry. So it's now going to be 40 spacing between the time and the buttons, and between the two buttons I'm going to have 40 as well. So it just spreads them out. I might even stretch it to 80. So it spreads out the two objects inside the H stack, gives them spacing between them. If there's a third object, say a reset button, for example, there'd be 40 between that object too. So that's what spacing does. So for the text, we're going to give this one a custom font. So same again with .font. And it's asking for a font. You can see there it's asking for a font with a capital F, dot. And I'm going to choose a custom font. And again, it's looking for some initializers. This is information that the custom font property requires in order to display on the screen. So it needs to know the name of the custom font you'd like to use, and the name is in a string format. So I can just put any old text in there with 2 speech marks. And since I'm going to use something that's common on every single device and also a monotype font, I'm going to put Curia as my font, and the size, I'll put a nice big 80. Next, the foreground color is going to be, again, it's asking for a color with a capital C, color.white. And for my buttons, we're going to do similar again, except I think we might make these a little bit more aesthetically pleasing. And inside our H stack, I'm going to put another Z stack. So this is going to layer objects just inside this Z stack and place them next to each other. So the Z stack is going to contain my text, but it's also going to contain a circle with a stroke. You see content shape style, line width float. So I need a number for my width of my border or my stroke around the circle, the line around the circle. The content shape style, the shape style can be a color. So I'm going to do color.white, and the line width I'll do 3. Now again, this is stretching to the full available space that's inside the user interface. So I'm going to have to give it a frame to make it smaller. So dot frame, width can be 100 and the height can be 100, just to bring down that Z stack to fit exactly into this frame of 100 by 100. So it brings down the time to be actually visible. Next will be another circle, but this time it's just going to have a foreground color of color.white and a frame again of width 95 and height 95. We want to shift that to 90, just give it a little bit more space. And that looks quite nice. It's very similar to the Apple Clock application and its buttons. So that works quite well. The font here can probably change to font. And again, it's asking for a font type. So I'm looking for font.title. And I'll make it bold. Finally, the color. Now I'm going to choose the light color from our theme at the top. So our 3 colors I'm calling my theme. Done. And that button looks quite nice. So I'm going to copy that button and paste another down the bottom. Get rid of that stop. Make this one stop also. Our spacing is looking a little bit wide now, so I'll bring it back to 40. And we're done. So we've got the time, the 2 buttons, and a linear gradient background. If we ever need to change the look of our application, we can easily just double click on any of the colors and get a little bit of a shift. And each time you change it inside the constants at the top there, you need to rebuild to see the changes.